In 2023, 92-year-old dementia patient Tom McDonald poured washing detergent over his bowl of cereal thinking it was milk. After eating most of the bowl, he told his daughter he wasn't feeling well and was soon rushed to the hospital, where he later died from acute toxicity. While 33-year-old actress Carol Lombard was on a war bond tour in 1942, she won a coin toss that determined she and her group would return home by plane instead of by train. Tragically, their flight would end up crashing into a mountain near Las Vegas, killing all 22 passengers on board, including 15 U.S. Army soldiers. 28-year-old Caitlin Jensen's life was changed forever after just a routine visit to the chiropractor. She went to have her neck adjusted for stiffness, during which 4 arteries in Caitlin's neck were accidentally dissected, resulting in a horrible stroke. She was reportedly without a pulse for 10 minutes until she could be revived by doctors. Caitlin was left with nearly full-body paralysis, only capable of blinking her eyes and moving her left thumb. In 1990, rock and roll pioneer Chuck Berry bought a restaurant in Missouri that didn't go very well for him. Shortly after opening, he was sued by several women who claimed he installed a video camera in the ladies' bathroom. Berry opted for a class action settlement with 59 women that cost him over $1.2 million. He claimed he set up the camera to catch a worker he suspected was stealing from his restaurant. But when police raided his home, they found several videotapes of women using the bathroom, and at least one of them was a minor. During the SARS outbreak in 2004, a Taiwanese woman made a bold attempt to protect herself from the virus. She bathed in a tub filled with 40% alcohol, hoping this would kill any of the potential germs on her body. She laid down in the fluid at 11 p.m. and was discovered dead by her family the next morning. An autopsy revealed that her blood alcohol level was 1.35%, meaning she absorbed a significant amount of alcohol through her skin. In 2004, 11-year-old Japanese schoolgirl Natsumi Tsuji led her best friend into an empty classroom where she promised to show her a new game. That's when Natsumi blindfolded the girl and ruthlessly slit her throat with a box cutter until she bled to death. Natsumi then returned to her classroom covered in blood while still holding the murder weapon. Spanish woman Aurora Rodriguez conceived her daughter as an experiment to try and create the perfect human. Her daughter Hildegard was able to read at age 2, spoke 4 languages by age 8, joined law school at 13, and became a professor there when she turned 18. But when Hildegard eventually tried to gain independence from her mother, Aurora concluded that the experiment was a failure and shot the girl dead while she was sleeping. Aurora was later infamously quoted saying, "The sculptor, after discovering the most minimal imperfection in his work, destroys it." She was sentenced to 26 years in prison, spending most of them at a mental asylum. In 1987, police responded to Illinois father Russell Dardine's home after he failed to report to work. There they found the dead bodies of his pregnant wife Ruby and their son, who were both victims of a brutal beating. Ruby was beaten so badly that she prematurely went into labor, and even the newborn baby was beaten to death as well. Initially, Keith was the most obvious suspect until his body was found shot dead in a nearby field with his genitals mutilated. Serial killer Tommy Lynn Sells later confessed to the murders but was never formally charged, so the case remains cold. In 1980, John Favera, the neighbor of mafia boss John Gotti, accidentally ran over and killed the mobster's 12-year-old son Frank. Although it was ruled an accident, Favera went missing that same year and was never seen nor heard from again. Former mobster Charles Carneglia later claimed that Favera was abducted, tortured, and slowly dismembered with a chainsaw while he was still alive. His remains were then stuffed inside a barrel filled with concrete and dumped in the ocean. In 1990, Florida woman Marlene Warren opened her front door to a clown holding flowers and balloons. After handing Marlene the gifts, the clown suddenly pulled out a gun and shot the woman in the face in front of her son. The case went cold for the next 27 years until a hair found in the evidence was traced to a woman living in Tennessee who was running a restaurant with the victim's ex-husband. Apparently the two were having an affair months before the murder and eventually got married themselves when it seemed like they were in the clear. This photo shows Muhammad al-Margrati begging for his life just moments before he was publicly executed with an AK-47. The man was convicted of raping and killing a 3-year-old girl, prompting a harsh response from the court. The execution drew a crowd of thousands of onlookers, some perched up on telephone poles or watching from rooftops. The victim's father said that he smiled and was filled with relief and satisfaction as the killer was pumped full of bullets. After the divorce of his parents, Jack Black got mixed in with the wrong crowd and became severely addicted to cocaine at the young age of 14. It got so bad that he would steal money from his mom to fuel his addiction, but was eventually able to kick the habit after switching schools. Jack also lost his gay older brother Howard to AIDS at the height of the epidemic in 1989. In 2009, an Italian brain surgeon was having a heart attack in the middle of performing a delicate operation. But instead of getting treatment, he powered through the surgery upon realizing that his patient may have died if he stopped, and both made a full recovery. In 2009, U.S. Marine Brian Dennis was stationed in Iraq when he met a stray desert dog named Nubs. After someone brutally stabbed the dog with a screwdriver, the Marine nursed him back to health despite expecting him to die. They developed such a strong bond that when the unit left, Nubs picked up Brian's scent and trekked 70 miles through an active desert war zone to be with him. Dennis soon shipped the dog to his home in San Diego, and the two have been best friends ever since. In 1977, 20-year-old Oregon woman Colleen Stan was hitchhiking to her friend's birthday party when she was kidnapped by Cameron and Janice Hooker, trusting them because they had an infant daughter in their car. Long before this, the couple agreed that husband Cameron could capture a slave to tie up for his pleasure, and he had decided on Colleen. For the next 7 years, Colleen was repeatedly tortured and kept locked in a tiny wooden coffin under the couple's bed for up to 23 hours a day. Cameron forced her to sign her life away to slavery via contract and convinced her that she was being watched by a powerful organization called the Company, which he claimed would painfully torture her and her family if she ever tried to escape. One day, 4 years after being kidnapped, Colleen was allowed to visit her family by herself, but she didn't reveal her situation to them due to her fear of the consequences. Her family simply thought she was involved in a cult, so they didn't want to pressure her to come home, fearing that she would stay away forever. The very next day, Colleen returned for a second visit with Cameron posing as her boyfriend, but again, nothing was done. 3 years later, Cameron wanted Colleen to become his second wife, which was a turning point for his wife Janice. In August of 1984, Janice secretly informed Colleen that they weren't part of the Company, and Colleen managed to escape soon afterwards. In the months that followed, Colleen didn't contact the police but continued to call Cameron routinely to give him a chance to reform. But 3 months later, Janice reported her husband to police and he received 100+ years in prison. While filming for Kitchen Nightmares in 2007, Gordon Ramsay visited a restaurant called Campagna in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. While there, he told the owner Joe Cerniglia that his business was about to swim down the effing Hudson River if it didn't change. Sadly, in 2010, Cerniglia had no choice but to sell the business after declaring bankruptcy, and days later ended up taking his own life in the Hudson River. Following the release of the original Exorcist, people were completely terrified of Linda Blair, the young actress who played the possessed girl Reagan in the film. She received hundreds of daily death threats as people often avoided walking past her on the sidewalk out of fear of being cursed. The Soviet Union built a massive stockpile of 45,000 nuclear weapons and then dissolved in 1991, leaving behind poorly paid guards who no longer had a country to hold allegiance to. Therefore, many of those nukes were sold to the highest paying bidders and have remained missing to this day. In 2019, the wife of Tampa Bay Rays prospect Blake Bivens was tragically shot and killed by her 18-year-old brother. Their newborn baby and the woman's mother were also victims of the random murder spree, which Bivens found out about from a headline he saw on Facebook. The pitcher later posted, "2 days ago my heart was turned to ash. My life as I know it is destroyed." Canadian serial killer nurse Elizabeth Wetlaufer told her pastor that she murdered 4 elderly patients by injecting them with insulin, and the pastor kept his promise to not turn her in. Afterwards, she would go on to murder at least 2 more patients before confessing to police. In 2021, 20-year-old Alex Kearns ended his life after thinking he lost $730,000 while trading options on Robinhood. He apparently saw the negative balance in his account and didn't know where to turn. The day after his tragic death, Robinhood sent Alex an email stating that the trade had been resolved and he didn't actually owe any money. In 2013, 19-year-old Maureen Kelly was camping in the forests of Washington State with some friends when she suddenly told them that she wanted to go on a spiritual quest. She then stripped naked, crossed a nearby creek, and was never seen again. Police quickly discovered her bare footprints on the other side of the creek, but they ended at a paved road and the trail went cold. often translated as death by 1,000 cuts. Ling Chi was a brutal form of execution used in China for nearly 1,000 years until it was outlawed in 1905. Journalist Sir Henry Norman described it as, "The criminal is fastened to a rough cross, and the executioner, armed with a sharp knife, begins by grasping handfuls from the fleshy parts of the body, such as the thighs and breasts, and slicing them off. Then the limbs are cut off piecemeal at the wrists and the ankles, the elbows and the knees, the shoulders and hips. Finally, the victim is stabbed to the heart and his head is cut off." Many reports detailed victims screaming for hours until they died.